Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Blair. I'm the editor of Retail Touchpoints, and today I am very happy to have Miya Knights, who's the head of industry insights at Eagle Eye Solutions, to join me for this retail reset conversation. With these conversations, we're looking to provide a curated virtual forum for retail executives to map their post-coronavirus recovery strategies. Today, we'll be digging into some of the ways businesses are reinventing themselves, helping them adapt and evolve amid the realities of COVID-19. Miya, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with Retail Touchpoints for Retail Reset. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Adam. That's absolutely great to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to contribute.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's dive right into it. We've all seen the large-scale impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on digital commerce. There was an initial rush to online shopping, particularly in the non-essential categories where stores weren't open, but also for groceries and other staple items. Now that it seems like dealing with the virus is becoming, at least in some sense, the new normal, what kinds of additional trends or follow-up trends are you seeing emerging in e-commerce in general?
So I think you've pretty well summed up the headline trend, which is massive surge to online. Another question that I answer similarly that I keep getting asked is, what's going to change? And I think nothing has really changed. It's just accelerated the changes and the trends we already saw. So before I dive into your e-commerce specific question, I think it's necessary to take a little bit of a step back and look at what consumer trends are doing to shopping generally, separate out what the impact is on stores, and then come back to e-commerce to sort of more specifically answer your question. So from a category specific point of view, there are losers and there are winners. I think we understand the non-essential out of home businesses are losing out. But interestingly, we're seeing consumer electronics down 25, 30%. We're seeing, of course, takeout and delivery down, and we're seeing beauty down almost 5% as well. That's across total US retail sales. But interestingly, winners, at-home fitness, dining, medical supplies, in-home entertainment, and of course groceries, which I think we'll come into in more depth, which is seeing a bump of about 15 to 20% across all total retail sales. So looking at a couple of recent reports based on some consumer surveys, one specifically an online consumer poll by LEK Consulting, found that US consumers are spending about 4 to 6% less overall. But out of the 18% of respondents that rated the severity of COVID-19 high, they were spending 17% more. So I do think we are seeing disproportionate spending amongst different demographic groups. So that's why we're seeing demand shortages and capacity constraints, both online and in store. Online, we're seeing a lot of range reduction to combat bulk buying, limits for customers, to cope with increased demand and accelerated shelf movement. I think broadly in the midterm, we're going to see more basic and bulky grocery items shift online. So that initial bump that we see might level out, but that shift to online will have maintained a significant increase from this because consumer habits are being shaped by this, particularly for first-time online grocery shoppers. And finally, in the hardest hit categories, I think we're going to see some really heavy discounting and promotions. I think we've already seen that in fashion, with some online fashion sites offering up to 50% off.
Okay. Well, so let's look behind the curtain a little bit. I mean, how are you seeing omnichannel and even pure play retailers dealing with the consequences or the challenges that come with this significant increase in selling online? I mean, I'm assuming we've seen supply chain disruptions and delays, out of stocks, site outages, due to an increased volume of visitors or at least slow performance. These are challenges that normally are seen maybe, during a holiday season spike or, maybe with some extraordinary circumstance. But I'd love to hear, how you see the retailers and the whole ecosystem dealing with this surge in demand through the online channel.
So absolutely, I think we're going to see some definite comparable responses in online versus the store. I think they're under similar pressures. I think I mentioned limiting and streamlining ranges, purchase restrictions in terms of the limits on the number of specific items customers can buy. I think we're going to see fewer expedited deliveries and higher delivery charges, just to disincentivize customers to rely on delivery. We're also seeing limited new customer sign-ups. So if you're not already a customer and they have stock, I think we've seen Amazon do this, but I've also seen other smaller independent online grocery retailers limit new customer sign-ups. I think generally, in terms of the wider ecosystem, we're also seeing, definite move to implement full capacity demand planning in the back office from a warehousing and distribution perspective. I'd like to call out a couple of interesting examples about, again, grocery being the hardest hit is an interesting one to look at from that perspective. And Woolworths in Australia has launched an interesting initiative called its Big Box, and it features only ambient products, and it's got a flat, all-inclusive of delivery charge of 80 Australian dollars, but it has allowed Woolworths to shift the packing of these online delivered goods to other warehouses. That's eased the burden on its stores and its own delivery network. And it's doing that in partnership with DHL and Australia Post, which is also, I think, an interesting trend that we're likely to see only accelerate, which is collaboration across the ecosystem. You said sort of omnichannel, not just pure play. So we're seeing some really proactive responses from the likes of Tesco, one of the big four grocers in the UK. They've actually ramped up 2 new stores near the new Nightingale hospitals, as we're calling them, in the UK, that have been purpose-built to deal with COVID-19 victims. And also we're seeing a pivot from food service and hospitality sector. That those deemed non-essential, particularly restaurants and bars, they've closed. Their kitchens might have been turned into dark kitchens in order to service an online delivery capability. I know Deliveroo in the UK said sign-ups were up 300% in March. So we're seeing a lot of activity in that sector as well. I think generally we're seeing those that didn't have an e-commerce presence or do have an e-commerce presence really focus hugely on that much more. It's become much more important, much more vital for them. And those that already have an established e-commerce presence really doing the same thing that the in-store retailers are having to do, which is find ways to manage and throttle demand.
Okay. And as stores begin to reopen and hopefully stay open, hopefully there's not a recurrence in too many areas. I mean, what's your best forecast of the overall digital trends, the things that you've been talking about? And, what kind of statistics or metrics should we be looking at to chart this new digital landscape specifically?
I thought that was a great question. Unfortunately, I don't know that I have an exciting answer in terms of new metrics. I think we have to look at the metrics that retailers are being measured by right now. For omnichannel retailers, it'll be comp store sales versus online growth. For pure plays, it'll be gross margin, and all that goes into that. That's the headline. But I think, the forecast is that most retailers with both a brick and mortar and an online presence will see comp store sales down in store, but almost doubling online. Triple digit online sales growth in many categories, double digit store decline. I think that's going to likely continue because from what we're seeing in models in other countries that have started to ease lockdown measures but maintain social distancing measures, that means that retailers have to continue to throttle throughput in their stores. That means restaurants can only have limited capacity, etc., etc. What does that mean in terms of the reaction retailers should have? I think that you're going to see a shift to lower margin categories, particularly in food and beverage. Expect to see a lot of inventory write-downs in hard hit categories, unsold apparel and accessories, summerwear that won't be used, on holidays that won't be taken. Factor into that higher wage bills for frontline staff, and also rapidly expanding new hires that are going to hit that bottom line. And also CapEx, the cost of protective equipment, safety and social distancing measures in stores and warehouses that can include testing, temperature checks, extra cleaning, all that's going to add to the bottom line. So I think net, we're going to see operating margins under huge pressure, potentially impacting profits and profits slashed. And in non-essential categories, we're already seeing huge revenue and cash flow challenges. New measures, I did try and think about those. And one was, I don't see many retailers looking at the omnichannel customer lifetime value. And by that, I mean, how much is a customer worth to me across all my channels? And likewise, what is the cost of customer acquisition? That's a hard one to say.
It's a tongue
but
twister,
you know what
yes.
I mean. Yeah, it's rising online. How does that compare in store? What does that happen if I have a store in the mix? And of course, then you're able to start calculating, that cross-channel cost of conversion and retention, and start to work out where to focus your strategic investments for the new normal.
Yeah, and I'm remembering what you said at the beginning, that it looks like this is accelerating trends that were already there, and that was certainly a concern among a lot of retailers of determining the customer lifetime value, and also what it takes to get them to move from one channel to another or to use multiple channels. It leads into my next question, which is the general one. We were certainly seeing, again, overall, e-commerce was growing more quickly than traditional brick and mortar commerce, although as a percentage of total sales, it still was relatively small. And balancing that's three hands instead of the other hand. There was usually a digital touch point in almost every transaction, every major transaction, certainly. Do you see this pandemic accelerating these trends or making them more intense? And might they arrest some trends? It sounds like it's going to accelerate them, but I'd want to hear your point of view.
Yeah, I think I agree. It's definitely going to accelerate them. It doesn't lessen the challenges, which I think we are going to come on to. But I think the thing that's changed and that really has got retailers of all, in all sectors on high alert is that this accelerated shift to online has really been driven by grocery, where grocery was, particularly low penetration from an online and home delivery perspective. I've heard some claims that during this period, online grocery spend will top out at about 50% per household and 45% non-grocery. So that really is a huge shift. I think that has implications, structural and operational implications that we talked about the whole ecosystem. It has implications for business models, whether you're pure play, omnichannel, or just store based. And it has huge implications for how you engage with your customers in the future. I mean, take a step back, look at the US online landscape pre-COVID. About 40% of consumer electronics were online, about 30% of apparel, but only 3 to 4% of grocery was online. I think it's safe to say that will be nudging double digits afterwards, and that's the same in the UK. It's about 8% online, and I think it's going to be nearer 15% now. But it was already the fastest growing category as a result, coming from a really low base, and it was being least penetrated. I looked around for some forecasts about post-COVID on grocery. So it was 23.4% growth, but just 3.2% of total US retail sales. But I think it's amazing that, given seeing sort of 210% growth on online grocery during March, and 800% growth in grocery app downloads. E-marketers saying that it could move from that 3.2% to 5.2%, and that's actually a $20 billion move online, which I think is going to be quite significant. I mean, it was already a $1 trillion US dollar sales category. So I think you're going to see a lot more consumers looking at sticking with household online delivery or pickup because they've tried it for the first time. I think Instacart also reported delivery volumes are up 150%. So again, part of the new normal, again, possibly dropping, definitely dropping back down to more reasonable levels, but at a higher level than before. And from a brand's perspective, I think it's really interesting. I think we are going to delve into loyalty a bit, but I think those habits that consumers will have changed during this period. The key ones to consider for me that I'm only just starting to think about the answers to the questions around are those consumers that trade up or trade down. Are they going to go back? I think this is a key period for really looking at your brand equity and how you're building affinity right now in order to get loyalty and maintain loyalty through this period and into the new normal.
Sure. I'm curious about your take on how the digital commerce and marketplace powerhouses, Amazon and Alibaba, have been dealing with the pandemic. Would you say any of them have been showing leadership or innovation? And if so, what are some of the things that you've seen in terms of that?
Leadership and innovation. So I think, again, it's been interesting to see that, let's say, Ocado in the UK, as well as Amazon in the US, have really suffered capacity issues. So I think that's going to accelerate trends towards automation in the warehouse, use of robotics in the warehouse. I think from a broader perspective, the digital advertising business, which also right now has taken a hit, is going to come back with resurgence. I think, Walmart's pulled back on digital ad spending, but I think it's going to be a bigger winner than Amazon coming out of this, albeit with a lower penetration of the market. Walmart's also apparently seeing half of all online grocery signups. So I think there's going to be an interesting shakeout from that in terms of market share. And that's another reason why I think it's going to ramp up its digital advertising business. And it will, I think, definitely accelerate Amazon's move offline. I mean, we've already seen rumours of them opening their first Amazon.go store in the UK, bringing ultra-fast fresh to the UK as well, which is its bundling in of Amazon Fresh with the Prime offering. And maybe even some possible large grocer acquisitions. So that's the future. But I also did have a look for some really good examples of innovation as well. And there's huge numbers of innovation going on at the moment, which is very, very exciting. I think I mentioned Deliveroo sign-ups. So they've waived, you've seen a huge number of businesses, technology, digital businesses, waive their sign-up fees for smaller businesses. eBay's done the same for onboarding its sellers, which I think was a good move. Alibaba and JD, and on the other side of the world, they've taken the initiative in launching COVID-19 tests and booking services. And then there's lots, I think Tmall and Alibaba have been particularly proactive in terms of highlighting what they're doing, particularly with hardest hit categories such as beauty. So they've launched an initiative that's going to help 1,000 emerging beauty brands achieve about 1.5 million each in annual sales every year. They're also partnering with brands, including Johnson & Johnson, to build dedicated hubs for developing new sub-brands into their portfolios, because I think new product development is definitely been put on hold and will need to be accelerated as we come out of this situation. And it's also launched a new marketing tool called Tmall New Superstar, which dives a bit deeper into the analytics that retailers can get. I said digital costs. Digital advertising costs have been slashed at the moment because so few people are advertising online. But that absolutely represents an amazing opportunity as well. So I see a lot of smaller direct to consumer brands being really savvy here and pivoting and using digital advertising to build more brand affinity and brand awareness. One in the UK is called Stock Up Small. It signed up 300 SMB brands within a week. And those include Dalston Soda, the company, and Joe and Steph's Popcorn, I think if you might have heard of that one. And natural foods, I think we're seeing an uptick in interest from consumers from a health and wellbeing perspective. So a natural foods online platform called Bubble reported a 10-time surge in new customer signups in the week of March. So we're going to definitely see some winners from this, and some people really capitalising on the need to build those, more immersive, stronger digital connections going forward.
Great. Okay. I'm curious. We touched on it a little bit, but once consumers are able to return to physical store shopping, what are some of the ways that you think retailers are going to be able to bridge that online and offline? I think that relates to what you were just talking about. And, how will these brick and mortar retailers woo the shoppers back if there's still concern and retain customer interest and loyalty? So just brick and mortar for now, I guess, would be the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think those retailers most at risk are those that are going to come out of this not having resolved structural issues such as cash flow and revenue. So if they've been closed and haven't been able to pivot to even to offer gift sales online to take it to continue having the sales come in against future, to have the revenue come in against future sales that they can count against future sales. But also those most exposed are going to be the ones that rely on discretionary spending, I think, in the midterm. And I think from those categories, we're going to see a lot more online to offline promotions to hopefully drive footfall. So download this voucher, particularly I think in leisure and hospitality, something we've seen a lot of activity from, say, drinks brands in the UK. I know there are restrictions on advertising that vary from country to country, but in the UK, some drinks brands have seen some real success in using social media platforms to advertise, incentivizing them to visit a particular chain of bars with a free drink. That helps with brand sampling, brand awareness, drives footfall to the brand. It's an attributable sale. You can see where I'm going with that. That online to offline link is going to be absolutely key. Also, I think driving increased interest in online to offline technologies. So mobile apps, anything that allows you to order ahead, pay at table, scan and pay, minimize social contact, maintain social distance. Also, I think we're seeing again from those countries that are starting to ease lockdown measures that with the throttling of traffic through stores, and I think most countries are really looking to their governments for guidance on this, just as they have for lockdown measures. But you are going to see a bump in demand for appointment booking apps, for example, helping to manage demand, to limit store and restaurant and gym access and throughputs. People like beauticians, I can see, that haven't really got systems like this will want them. And then finally, specifically in store, I would say definitely have a look at live chat. There are some really interesting innovations happening there. A company that's been around for a while called Go in Store started using Google Glass to do live demonstrations. And their first customer was a music shop, an independent music shop. So I want to buy a guitar. You're going to play me Stairway to Heaven on this guitar and show me what you're doing as you're doing it, point of view. It's great. Another one I discovered a couple of years ago called Hero Commerce offers live text and chat and also video linked to the store. But that's a lot on the e-commerce platform. So I can be shopping and browsing and think, do they have it in my nearest store? And that can connect me seamlessly to an associate in the store, which I think makes really drives home that online to offline link and making the most of your stores from a digital perspective as well.
Yeah, so you're making use of the stores and the expertise of the associates or the managers that are working there as well,
Yeah,
as part of the sale. Okay. Well, and
absolutely.
let's turn it around a little bit. E-commerce, or primarily e-commerce companies, are seeing this boom, and I'm sure some of them are, many of them are going to want to retain these customers as online or digital customers when the pandemic recedes. I mean, what kinds of things should they or can they be doing to build or maintain customer loyalty? And have you seen any good or not so good examples of these retailers taking these actions to try and retain these customers as future customers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I would start off by, I often can give the store experience a pretty hard time, being a bit of a digital black hole. But I would say that there are some problems with the online experience as well, partly stymied online grocery growth, particularly. So those things that I would suggest pure plays and anyone with an e-commerce presence tackle immediately are anything to do with delivery fees and delivery inconveniences. So I really hope we're going to see more innovative fulfillment development that we've already seen from the real industry leaders like Walmart and Amazon in terms of delivering to your trunk or a locker or a fridge. I think if only to improve margins on food, particularly if we're going to see this continued growth in online grocery. Also, I think there's huge browsing limitations in grocery, particularly with fresh produce and substitutions. I haven't seen anything as innovative and out there as that Walmart sort of virtual stamp conveyor belt patent that it filed last year. But I think, not going quite that far. I think we're going to see more interest in augmented reality and virtual reality to just generally compete with the store experience. I noted, again, looking at those innovations that are happening now. So on Tmall, brands have reported that AR-enabled features for things like makeup and beauty can increase page dwell time from 30 seconds right up to 70 seconds. So anything that can personalize the experience for the customer online is going to be really important as well. And also reduced returns. I talk about a really great example launched in the UK called the vegan filter. So simple, but so great. It's a Chrome browser extension that if I was vegan, I would download, and then any grocer that has a compatible website would only show me vegan options. Great. Halves my browsing time, gets me to what I want to find much more quickly, gives me a much more personalized experience. I think pivot to fashion, likewise, we're going to see virtual fitting room solutions increase in terms of interest. And then live streaming, short videos, customer service assistants, I think we covered, chat rooms, microblogging, all those kinds of things. From an operational standpoint, again, thinking about grocery, we're going to see more dark stores. I don't think that's quite a huge trend in the US as it has been in the UK. But that there again, we're going to see more robotic warehouse automation. Although, interestingly, I note the likes of Ocado haven't been able to ramp up capacity because their systems are so fixed. So I think that's going to cause robotics manufacturers to reevaluate their demand capacity planning capabilities. And anything that can accelerate online services that can accelerate convergence between online and physical in terms of click and collect, booking ahead and so on. I think also really simple but key thing is coupons and offers and loyalty schemes, anything that recognizes me as a valued customer, being able to use that both online and in your stores or in partner stores. To be able to bridge that online to offline gap in the same way that I said the store-based retailer is going to have to work in an opposite way. And also digital media ads spending. I said just before, going to get a boost because I think, CPG brands have realized that their flyers and their above the line advertising through things like TV and billboards just haven't been delivering the return on investment. In fact, the long lag time on paper means that promotions can seem really, really insensitive by the time they're produced. So the digital flexibility and agility you can get will allow CPG brands, I think, to continue to accelerate their spending with digital. They'd much rather fight for the share of the online basket because that has a stickiness to it in terms of repeat orders than they would for the rising cost per acquisition, acquisition costs for customers on the likes of search engines and so on right now.
So it really sounds like there's an array of tools and potential capabilities that online retailers or omnichannel retailers can use. There's really an entire portfolio, and it's interesting. We're recording this on Monday the 27th. I think it was just announced that Bed Bath & Beyond is turning, I believe, a quarter of their stores into dark stores for fulfillment. So maybe it will be catching on more in the US. I just had one final question, sort of your general advice to any of the executives that are watching for your strategic recommendations as they're looking for a way forward. I mean, what kinds of things would you say to an executive in terms of setting up a plan and beginning to put it in motion?
Yeah, so I did make a list here, so forgive me for referring to it, but I do want to keep these, given that we're executives we're talking about, want to keep it short and to the point. In the midterm, near to midterm, plan for the impact of those social distancing measures. They will be in place for a while. Plan for the impact on a physical space in terms of demand and capacity and throughput, continued impact on hiring and staff well-being. In the mid to long term, I think that is going to really enable, particularly in the context of their online growth, to help them right-size their store estate. It's something that's been well overdue by format and location and size. I think that's going to have to meet the new normal as well. What do I mean by that? I think, the acceleration to local and convenience, I think, is also going to increase. People aren't going to want to go far, and they're just going to want to top up. As I said, maybe in concert with buying bulkier items online through, say, subscriptions. And then basics, reevaluate your planning scenarios, particularly for capacity planning in the warehouse and distribution space, building even more supply chain, business continuity and disaster recovery resilience. And again, this ability to see the effect that your stores have had if they've been closed or throttled, compared to what your customers have been doing online. Try and use that intelligence around customer activity and loyalty, tied to sales with literally SKU level data, to help with that supply chain forecasting and flexibility. That's going to be absolutely key. And I think it's also really important to say that even if you've put new product development on hold, all that data and insight that you can derive from that data, joined up across stores and online, can really help with new product development, sales and marketing planning going forward. Generally, accelerate your digital transformation. If you haven't already, go faster. Shift to online means, you're really going to need to be able to identify who your customers are, both in store and online, and use that knowledge to facilitate seamless shopping journeys across all channels, because those that shop with you across all channels are the most valuable. And then prioritize investments in store, and those online as well, that put the omnichannel customer first. I think I outlined some of those when you asked the store-based and e-commerce based technology questions. But again, I would call out, pre-ordering, click and collect, mobile payment, and channel agnostic promotions is absolutely key. Final point: design a business, much as less a customer experience, that rewards the behaviour it seeks. I think we've seen some really interesting examples of promotions being used to throttle buying, purchasing behavior, to tackle bulk buying. For example, in Sweden, a grocer used its promotion till system to charge a customer 7 krona for its first bottle of hand sanitizer, but 100 krona for every bottle thereafter. I think we need to see some more innovative uses of those kinds of pricing, strategic pricing and promotion capabilities, and to be able to use them across online and the store consistently has to be the mantra going forward.
Great. Well, Miya, it is always a pleasure to speak with you and hear your insights. Thank you so much, and please stay safe and healthy. And I'd say that also to everyone watching this video. Stay safe and healthy, and thanks for watching.
Thank you, Adam. You stay safe too. Stay safe and
Thank
healthy.
you.